Konnichiwa. Today we're going to do an anime walkthrough. I'm going to show you step by step how we go through an anime, understanding and working it out. And the anime I've chosen for this purpose is Shirokuma Cafe, which has a number of advantages. It is not especially aimed at male humans or female humans, so it should appeal to everybody. The characters speak on the whole slowly and relatively clearly. None of them have regional accents like Kansai-ben. A lot of anime have at least one character who talks Kansai-ben. And we're going to have a look at that later, because if you don't know at least the rudiments of Kansai-ben, you're going to be a bit anime challenged. But we don't want to take that on at this stage. And there isn't a lot of background music that makes the dialogue difficult to hear. On top of this, there are a lot of episodes, and that's important because it's good to watch a lot of the same anime for a number of reasons. Notably that every anime tends to have its own subset of commonly used vocabulary, so it gives you more chance to get used to that. And another very useful thing is that in Shirokuma Cafe, unlike most anime, every episode is divided cleanly into two halves with two separate stories. And the good thing about that is, as we were saying in our first anime lesson, you need to put a story onto your phone or your iPod once you've worked through it, and then listen to it again and again and again, and this is how you're going to get not just the vocabulary but Japanese itself into your system. Now it takes quite a long time to work through an anime in the early stages, which means that your flow of new material onto your audio stream is going to be relatively slow. However, with Shirokuma Cafe, once you've finished a story within an episode, you can use the Audacity trick that I showed you again in that first video to trim down to the first story, put that on your phone, then when you watch the second story, you can trim the audio down to that story, put that onto your iPhone, and that speeds up your throughput of audio material. Alright, so let's start with this first episode. Now, I'm not going to do a complete walkthrough every sentence in the show. That would take a huge amount of time and make a very, very long video. So I'm going to do some sentences at first and then some others, just to give you an idea of how we go about this. If enough of you want me to do a real walkthrough, I will try to do it. I won't do it in place of my regular lessons because I know lots of people are not going to want me to stop doing the regular videos on all kinds of subjects every week. So I'll try to squeeze those in as an extra sometime midweek, if enough of you want me to do it. So if you do want me to do it, let me know in the comments below. Alright, so the very first subtitle in the show is the title of the first story, which is Shirokuma Cafe e Yokoso. And this just means welcome to Shirokuma Cafe. Yokoso means almost literally welcome, and we always use e, not ni with it. It's a set phrase, and that's how it works. Alright, so the first real subtitle, the first piece of dialogue, and if this is your first subtitle, your first piece of anime dialogue that you've ever looked at and worked on, then you can make a wish, because you're allowed a wish on your first piece of anime dialogue. So, wish hard. Alright, let's go. It is Sasa o tabe nagara nonbiri suru no wa saiko da na. Now, what does this mean? Sasa is bamboo grass. Should you put this in your Anki? Not unless you're particularly interested in having that particular kanji, and I would say don't worry about it at this stage. Sasa itself, bamboo grass, you're going to hear quite a lot, because Panda-kun eats it all the time, and there's going to be a character called Sasako, which is bamboo grass child. She's just a regular human being, but she happens to be called Sasako. you get this kind of thing in anime. So you're going to be hearing sasa a lot. You can add it to your Anki if you want to, but what I would say is don't clutter your Anki with it. You're going to have to put plenty in your Anki. It's not a piece of vocabulary you're going to need every day, and it will be adequately handled by the anime. Sasa o tabe nagara. What does that mean? Well, nagara is a helper which goes onto the I stem of a verb. Taberu, as we know, is an ichiran verb, so its I stem is the same as all its other stems. And nagara is a conjunction. It works as a conjunction to conjoin two clauses, and it says that while clause A is happening, clause B is also happening. So sasa o tabe nagara means while eating bamboo grass. And then it says nonbiri suru no wa saikou da na. Nonbiri is one of those nouns that works as an adverb all on its own, and also if you add suru to it, it works as a verb. And what it means is being at leisure, being leisurely, taking it easy. So nonbiri suru means being leisurely or lazing around. Saikou is made up of two kanji. The first one, sai, means most, and ko, if you have some basic kanji, if you've done Alice in Kanji Land or anything like that, you'll recognize this as the kanji we find in takai, high, and it means high. Ko is its operating. So saikou means literally most high, and it's used to mean best. So, what Panda-kun is saying here right at the beginning of the anime is eating bamboo grass while lazing about is the best. And then we have na, which I've talked about in another video. It's a sentence ender which addresses a remark to yourself. So it's really making this all into an exclamation. Panda-kun is saying to himself, eating bamboo grass while laying about is the best, isn't it? Now, his mother comes in and starts with the word chotto. Chotto, as you know, it means a little, and it's often used in phrases like chotto matte, meaning wait a minute, or chotto ii, which is like, is a little good. Do you have a little time? Do you have a minute? That kind of thing. Chotto, in this kind of situation, is saying, hold up there, hold up a minute. So it's really just a sentence introducer, and in this case it's a bit of an irritated one. Chotto, wait a minute, hold on there. Mata kono ko wa hiruma kara goro goro shite. Now, mata is again, kono ko, this child. Hiruma is daytime, middle of the day. Kara, in this case, really means during. It's actually literally after, but in fact it means during, after daytime. Not at night, not in the early morning, but after daytime, right in the thick of the day. Goro goro has a number of meanings. It can be a cat's purr, or it can be something big and round, rolling. Koro koro means turning round and round or rolling. Goro goro, by blunting that koro koro sound, makes it feel heavier and slower. The Gorons in Zelda, those rock people who roll, their name Goron comes from Goro Goro. But it can also mean lazing around. And in the case of Panda, this is a very good choice because Panda is round and he does roll around while he's lazing around. So Goro Goro Suru is a very good expression for the way Panda idles around. And we're going to see that used for him quite often. And then shite. Shite, obviously, is turning that Goro Goro into Suru, the act of lazing around. And the sentence is then ended with a te form, which is a connective form. But that's the end of the sentence. And as I pointed out in another video, this is something we find very often in Japanese. Sentences ended on te form or another conjunction, which implies there's something else to be said, although we're not saying it right now. What is it that she was going to say? Well, probably something like, wait a minute, once again, Mata, this child, Konoko, lazing around is not good. The shite is implying a negative comment on all of this. And then she says, Soji no jama yo, doki nasai. Now, soji is cleaning, house cleaning or whatever. Jama is obstruction, jamming things up, you might say. Is what we say when we enter somebody's house. Ojama shimasu. I'm being an obstruction. I'm entering your house and getting under your feet. It's a humble way of saying you're going into somebody's house. So, soji no jama means obstruction of the cleaning. It's not a full sentence, you're just saying obstruction of the cleaning, you know. Doki nasai. Now, doki is the I stem of doku, which means to get out of the way. And when we put nasai onto the end of the I stem, you're bound to be familiar with nasai. It's the same nasai that we find in set expressions like oyasumi nasai, gomen nasai. And it's really asking someone to do something. Oyasumi nasai, take a rest. Rest well, you might say in English. When it's put on the end of the I stem of a verb, it makes a command, and a kind of command that you give to a child or an inferior. So, doki nasai means get out of the way. So, those are the first few sentences. After that, Panda gets out of the way and asks his mother for more bamboo grass. Okawari. Okawari means a second helping or a refill. And we're going to come across this word quite a lot. So, let's fix that in our minds. Okawari is a second helping, a second serving, a refill. And his mother says, "Do suru no anata no shourai wa?" Now, this is an example of a turned around sentence, and we see a lot of these in casual speech. Do suru no means, what are you going to do? Literally, it means how. Do, we know, is a question word. Are you going to do, or are you going to act? So in English, we'd say, what are you going to do? The no marks a question. No can also, in casual speech, mark a statement as well as a question. So it's from the tone or the context that we know that it's a question. In this case, we also know that it's a question because do, how, is a question word. So do suru no means what are you going to do? And then she says, anata no shourai wa, which means your future. And as you see, this is turned around. Usually you would say, anata no shourai wa do suru no. You set the topic first, and then you make the comment, but she's doing it the other way around, which is often done for emphasis, or because you're adding the topic as an afterthought. So she makes the comment first, which is what you're going to do, and then she makes the topic clear, your future. So what you're going to do about your future is how you would say it in English. And Panda-kun replies, "Mo goro goro shiteru toki ni shourai no hanashi nanka shinai de yo." Now, mo here means already, but it's often used to preface a complaint. Rather than in English, you might say, enough already. That already, it doesn't have a logical function exactly, but it tends to give the impression that you've had enough and you're complaining. More. And then the actual sentence is goro goro shiteru toki, the time of lazing around. Goro goro shiteru toki ni, in the time of lazing around, at the time of lazing around. Shourai no hanashi nanka. Shourai, as we know, is future. Hanashi is talk. Nanka, which in full is nanika, somewhat, something. When added after something like this, means that type of thing, but it means it in a dismissive kind of way most of the time. She was saying stuff like that, nanka. And shinaide, suru, with the negative helper adjective nai in its te form. Now you might say, surely the te form of the negative helper is nakute, and it is, but it has another special te form, and don't worry that there are all kinds of different te forms. There aren't. I think it's only nai that I can think of that has two te forms. And this naide has two meanings. You only use it in these two circumstances. You use it when you mean doing something without doing something else. If you say A, naide, B, suru, you're saying doing A without doing B. And its other use, and that's the one we've got here, is don't do this. Now you know the te form can often be used to tell someone or ask someone to do something. Mite kudasai means please look, but you often just say mite or mite, look. Naide has that force as well, and it's rather more forceful, and it often gets used on its own. So, shinaide, don't do. So what Pandakun is saying here is, more, it just prefaces a complaint. In my time of lazing around, don't talk about stuff like my future. And the mother says if you have the free time, shima, then you should get a part-time job, baito. Baito actually comes from the German Arbeit, which means work. The Japanese word is arubaito, which only has the meaning of a part-time job and is very often reduced to just baito. And Pandakun's reply is, goro goro suru no ni isogashii kara ato ni suru yo, which means, because I'm busy lazing around, do this later. Talk about my getting a job later. Ato ni suru means put something off till later. Put this off till later because I'm busy right now lazing around. And this annoys his mother, as you might expect. So she sucks him with the vacuum cleaner, and this is the way she punishes Pandakun when he's being a bad panda. And Pandakun cries, "Ah! Suanaide!" This su means suck. It's the same su that we use in tobacco, or su, which means to suck tobacco or smoke. In this case, is attaching the negative helper verb nai with that imperative de te form. Suanaide, don't suck, don't suck. So, as a result of this, he leaves the house and goes into the compini, and in the compini, he notices some magazines advertising work. So he takes a few of these up to the tennin-san, the person serving at the counter, and says, "Hatarakanaide o kane ga moraeru shigoto ga notte iru no wa dore desu ka?" Hatarakanaide gives us this other meaning of naide. It's without doing. So without working, hataraku is work. Without working, okane ga moraeru, that means can get money. Shigoto. So work. Shigoto is work. Work that you can get money for. So occupation that you can get money for without working. Ganotte iru. Now, noru means to put something on something, but in this case it means to publish something in a magazine. So what he's asking here is, in which of these magazines, dore, in which of these magazines is published occupations for which you can get money without doing any work? And the Tennin-san seems to think that they don't exist. Panda returns home and gets vacuum cleaned again, and leaves the house and sees a butterfly with a thread attached to its little feet, and stops to try to help it. Now, Pelican is usually rather a selfish individual, so it's perhaps a little unusual for him to do an act of kindness to another creature. The butterfly flies away with the thread still attached, and Pelican follows it down what seems like a magical pathway. It's a rather beautiful scene, like a magical transformation from Pelican's everyday world, through an act of kindness, and through following a golden butterfly and a magic thread, into a place where his life will be changed forever. So, I think you get the general idea of how we go about this. If there are any things in this episode that really puzzle you, please put them in the comments below. And if you'd like me to do a complete walkthrough, bit by bit, in between the other videos, please let me know that in the comments below. I'm not sure if I'll find time to do it, but I'll try if I can. And of course, if you have any regular questions or comments, they go in the comments below too, and I will answer as usual. I'd like to thank my gold Kokeshi patrons, my producer angels who make these videos possible, and all my patrons and supporters on Patreon and everywhere. You'll find my red Kokeshi patrons credited in the information section below. And I'd like to thank you for attending this lesson. Korekara mo yoroshiku onegaishimasu. Class dismissed.